We back live? Oh, there we go. Okay. So. Not my problem. You get a lot of sympathy, don't you? Okay, so with that, we are still on 23 LSO 0022, County Gravel Road Maintenance Technology Transfer. And I think at this point, we're ready for any public comments. Anybody in the virtual realm? Nope. Anybody in the room? One last chance, public comment. Senator.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just want to make sure I heard things earlier. As I listened to what we're doing with this bill, it seems to me we basically said that the county commissioners and the road and bridge crews are incapable of identifying what roads need to be fixed, yet the statement was also made that they do a very good job. So my question is, where is the disconnect on that? And why can't the county commissioners and the county road and bridge identify dirt roads that need to be fixed? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So Senator, who would you like to ask that question to? We have the County Commissioners Association, we have YDOT, we have the university.
County Commissioner Association, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Jeremiah, please come back. You thought you were done.
Mr.
Please.
Chairman, Senator McCune, to be completely clear, I think that the counties, their road and bridge staff are doing a phenomenal job of identifying the work that they need to do. What I've suggested here is that by having better information about the condition of roads and having that supported through particular data sets that we know can help inform them, will ensure that their investments are that much better when they go about their work. Right now, we have county road and bridge personnel driving these roads and again are making some informed, educated guesses about where they should put their investments. But by having the data that we have for the pavement management system and what we're able to do there, that's really the goal here, is to ensure that they have better information about where to put their, the few dollars that they do have into investing and maintaining our roads.
Follow-up, Senator?
Once again, I'm perplexed. We push for local control and local operations, and now it seems like we're sucking it back up to the state through the university. And I would ask, do you believe that the county commissioners and the road and bridge crew and people who live in the counties don't understand which roads are traveled most and which probably need to be fixed first? It almost seems like we're hiring a consultant to borrow our watch and tell us what time it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Raymond.
Mr. Chairman, this is, Senator McCune, this is an opportunity for local governments to band together and utilize the few dollars that they have to hire one consultant to do this analysis and provide them with information. I'm coming to you as a local representative, asking you to let us use some of our dollars that otherwise would be coming down to the local level to do this. We're putting our money where our mouth is and asking you to help us do that. That's what I'm here for.
Director, do you have a comment you'd like to make?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Senator, I think I'd just like to jump on as a state transportation guy and say that Mr. Reeman is he makes the correct point. Life is always better with data. And as we run our system across the state, you know, the system that we have to track the condition of the roads makes a difference as we work to allocate money to maintain those roads. And it works really good for asphalt. And in this case now, what we're saying is, hey, let's get there on gravel. So I'm comfortable, and it makes sense to me that we do band together. We put it down to the university where there's some expertise, where there's a lot of expertise, and then we push that back out of the counties. To me, it's about sort of a wise use of resources as we steward the public's money.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. So I'll ask one last time. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Committee? I'll move the bill. Moved by Landon, seconded by Furphy. So we'll just go through it page by page. Page 1. Page 2.
I have an amendment to page 2.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer an amendment for the committee's consideration on page 2. It would be line number 4, after parentheses A, where it says the University of Wyoming. Strike that language and say a Wyoming university, college, or private entity, subject to competitive bid, and then the language would take up normally may operate a technology transfer center, et cetera, with conforming changes throughout the rest of the bill as necessary. And the reason that I would offer that is that I certainly believe in the intent of this bill. I think that it's going the right direction, but I think that it's wrong to make it a monopolistic or a sole source bill insofar as we all have community colleges in our areas. The community colleges may be interested in getting involved with this. We have several community colleges that have fantastic technology programs, and this is not rocket science. When I went to my community college, I took statistics and I took calculus at the community college level. They have instructors that are completely competent and able to handle this type of data. And again, in the aviation business, I receive service bulletins all the time that talk about expected failures, mean time between failure. And it will give you a manufacturer's name and a serial number range, and it'll say, we have noticed that when this particular component gets to 2,000 cycles, they're starting to fail at an abnormally high rate. And so then you go out and you proactively take care of it. That's all this is. If you have a road that goes across a bentonite field, that takes a lot more maintenance than if you have one that goes across shale or bedrock or something else. So I think that this is something that other, especially community colleges, could be completely competent at handling. And I think that it would give our community colleges or private entity here in the state of Wyoming an opportunity to compete and look into it.
Okay, and that amendment was seconded by Representative Burt.
Yes, sir.
So, discussion. Representative Burt, did you? Oh, okay.
No, I just want to make sure everybody knew it was seconded.
Any discussion? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I really appreciate my colleague from Natrona County. He makes some very salient points. My concern is the testimony that we got from our department and from the university is just a concern over other entities being able to handle this kind of work. I don't know that we have enough bodies in place at any one of the colleges. Maybe we do. I spent 31 years at one in our neighborhood. In the trade and tech areas, it's been reduced dramatically over the years. So I'm just a little bit reserved on that point. I'm not sure which way I'll go on this. I really don't have any problem with a bid structure either. I just wonder if there's anybody out there to do the work. So. Thank you.
Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Representative McGuire came to me, talked about this, it was, for me, it was really a no-brainer because we like that free market style of it. And the amendment doesn't exclude the university, it just includes the ability for others to bid. And where I look at it is if I'm a private contractor and I'm like, this is something I can do, if I have the resources, or I may have to put in a small investment to get to that point to where I could bid for it, there's no way I would put in my personal money to try to fight the state government money. It doesn't work that way. I will lose every time because I have to be able to show a profit or a good return on investment to where when it's public money, we don't. We just keep putting more money back at it. So when he came at me and asked me about that, for me, always allowing private the opportunity to compete with public, it should always be to the point where we're getting the best return on investments, and the public sector, our tax dollars, should be invested properly. And having that ability to compete that should keep that checks and balances in there. So that's where I'm at on that. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Furphy. I got it right this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, let me explain something here. This department of the university has been studying asphalt and road conditions since the early 1950s. They have specific scientists who understand road conditions, and they're experts in the field. Believe me, nationwide experts in the field. That's why they're qualified to do this. The junior colleges, I love the junior colleges, but they don't have the expertise to do this kind of work. So it's very specific and specialized. So that's why they need to do this job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's our place to decide who does it. I think that the commissioners or whoever's working this will have to decide who does it. All that this amendment does is open it up that somebody else can bid if they so desire. And maybe like the senator from Casper said that they don't have the expertise to do it, then they won't bid it. There'll be just one person bids. So just open it up, let somebody bid if they so desire, and then let somebody pick. Not for us to decide who it is. Thank you.
Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to say, I couldn't have said that any better. Thank you.
Senator Pappas.
I'm just a little bit confused, and I understand where Representative McGuire is coming from, but this existing program, the University of Wyoming Technology Transfer Center program, is an ongoing program, and I don't know how it's funded, but this is existing statute. Are we actually expanding this program now by allowing other entities to come into it, including private? I just think that it's outside the scope of the bill, but maybe our legal staff could, it seems like it's completely outside, it seems like it's a big change outside the scope of this bill.
Heather, could you offer an idea on that?
Mr. Chairman, the current statutes refer to a very specific program, and then they tell how the funding and the distribution of funds go to that specific program and provide for it through the corresponding statutes. If it were to be expanded like this, the committee would need to indicate who would administer it, because currently the program exists and it's administered. It does say on page 2 that of the bill draft that the Wyoming Department or the Department of Transportation shall administer the funding of the program. So would the committee's intent be for the YDOT to take over this program and then open it for bid? Because there needs to be, it would seem as though there would need to be somebody to put out these RFPs and open it up and administer it, and because it's an existing program, and so, and it's administered, it already exists by the university. Would the committee want to specify that the university should include others in as a cooperative program, or somehow the mechanism for making this work would need to be included? It may be that is separate from this bill is all about funding, whereas that would be about administration of the program, so maybe it's a separate bill. I'm not entirely sure, but there are missing pieces. Should the committee wish to pass this amendment, it would not be complete, and it wouldn't, it would be left open of how it would even work.
Yeah, follow it, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, please.
Yeah, and that's kind of, thank you for that explanation, Heather. That's kind of my concern with this. You know, at first blush, it seems like, yeah, that makes sense. But the more I look at the bill and the more I could, you know, it is a funding bill. It's not a bill that's changing the program. And I think what you're wanting to do is completely change the program. And so I think that needs to be another bill, and maybe that's something we should look at, but I'm just concerned that it's way outside the scope of this funding bill. And maybe others out there have an idea, could give us some thoughts on the program, because I'm not really that familiar with it either.
Okay. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I like the concept of free market and competition, but I think there's a potential for unintended consequences, as has been discussed. And I think the key objective, as I read the bill, is to provide a process for shared cost, shared responsibility for the cost. And I may be a little off on that, but that's my reading of it. And so I think this, you know, Occam's razor, I think some situations we need to keep it simple, and that's the best answer. And I think this is a fairly straightforward process for doing that. The university, as mentioned, has had decades of data collection and analysis and providing that analysis at the appropriate time. And so I'm going to ask to resist this amendment and move forward with the bill. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Heather, this is under 2117-115. Is that in the education or UW section of statute?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Title 21 is the education statute, and Chapter 17 is the University of Wyoming.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to think of a way forward. I don't dislike the concept of the amendment. But I do have the concerns that have been expressed about unintended consequences of how we're going to execute the program. I wonder if we couldn't spend a little additional time between now and the session. If we really want to go this direction, it's going to take a more substantive amendment, I think, than what we've got here. Or we can spend some more time today and try to flesh this out. But it's going to take more than us just saying we want it bid out. Well, who, when, where, how, why? And what does that do with our pavement program? Are we just talking about gravel roads, or do we want the whole thing wrested from the university? It just seems to me like we've got quite a few tentacles running through this. So it's doable, but I think to do it on the fly today, I don't know if we can get our arms around it.
Other comments on the amendment? Any other comments? Doctor, you had your turn. This is committee discussion now. Thank you. Okay, committee? Go ahead. I think Representative Romero Martinez had his hand up. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. I like the concept of it. Maybe we can't flesh it all out right now, but it needs to be prioritized because the idea of just going to one location, if our community colleges are not capable of doing technology transfer centers, then I guess that's the question I don't have in front of me, but I do think we need to open it up for competition. Maybe now is not the right time, I don't know, but it's a great concept.
Thank you. And Senator Anderson had called for the question. So all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? No. Okay, we'll do it. I should have done it to start with. We'll do a show of hands. All in favor? 4, 8. All opposed? 5, 6. So amendment is adopted. Okay, page 2. Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Chairman. On line 19 and 20, I want to reinsert available funds, scratch out general funds, and put this under the Department of Transportation in their budget, not the general fund.
Okay. Representative, do you have wording that I can put in here so that you're on page 2, I assume?
Page 2, line 19 and 20, just
Okay,
reinsert available funds, strike out the general fund.
okay. Everyone clear on that? Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, just as a point of order, the correction that was asked for by our staff actually contains the available funds verbiage. That is the proposed amendment. And it's on the sheet that was provided to you. So we may want to take this up in a more robust fashion rather than just a couple of words.
This is the amendment that was placed on everybody's desk. Top says correction to 23 LSO 0022.10. So, Representative, I think if we handled this first, you may have another amendment to it.
I'll withdraw my amendment.
Okay, so. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that we need a vote on the correction, but we may want to just, I'll make the motion that we adopt the correction that was requested by staff.
Okay, motion by Landon, seconded by O'Hearn. Discussion on the correction amendment, and I think that's appropriate to call it an amendment at this point. Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for I guess for correction, looking at it, it looks like it removes the language of available funds. And this, well, the last main line, it says that, and from the general fund, it looks like removing lines 19 through 23 on 2 and inserting this language. It looks like we are going to, it looks like we're moving it to the general fund and not available funds. I guess I'm not understanding how we're getting back to available funds to the Y dot, like Representative Stiver was trying to move that direction. Some clarification, please.
Heather?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, already in the existing program, the Wyoming Department of Transportation and counties and cities and towns provide, they contribute 25,000, or that whole little thing about 31,250, blah, blah, you know, that deal. This committee directed, for the whole purpose of the bill draft, they said that there should be a state match. And so that next part is the state match. So that was the committee's directive from May.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Just as a point of order, we would have the opportunity to further amend this language. My intention by moving this was to simply get the correction in the bill, and then we can tackle paragraph I. But to specifically answer the representative's question, if you'll notice the first line in the corrected paragraph, subparagraph I, Wyoming Department of Transportation from available funds. That's the first line of the paragraph. The new language is subsequent to that, but that pulls in available funds. Whether or not we want to keep general fund down at the bottom of the paragraph, we can further amend if the committee so desires.
Representative Stiver?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's what I agree, we need to take general fund out of there. That was my whole point of this, my amendment.
Okay, so are you proposing an amendment to the amendment?
Yes, to strike general fund out of the, whatever line it'd be from the correction for this amendment.
Mr. Chairman, where do we want the funds to come from?
That was going to be my question. So Representative, if we just strike general fund, then it would read, and contributing $300,000, but we don't
From the
specify where we
Wyoming
want
Department of Transportation's funds.
Okay.
Remember, we pulled them off general funds,
to. Yep. So you're suggesting it be the highway fund?
the highway fund, yes, sir.
Okay. So the amendment to the amendment would be, and I'm on the next to the last line for the amendment, and from the Department of Transportation's highway fund contributing. Am I correct? Is that what you want? Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, again, to correct me if I'm wrong, but this entire bill, it was to increase, it wasn't to look at who's paying what, right? There is already a county budget amount and a state match, right? So all we were doing is increasing those amounts by this. So again, I think it's outside of the scope of the bill. Now we're actually changing the whole process. We're getting rid of the state match. I don't think that was the intent of the bill. Certainly not by what I read in the first paragraph. Is there a second to that motion? Oh,
To
I'm
amend
sorry.
the amendment, no, not yet.
And I may be wrong, but.
Okay,
I just-
seconded by McGuire, so we can discuss it. Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess that was going to be my question, is removing that language. If the entire bill was to state match, removing the general fund, is that going to affect every other paragraph that we're adding to it? And if that is, then that would be outside the scope and purview of the bill itself. So again, I think we may have just muddied what we've got going on.
Any other discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Yes, Heather.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt has a good point. If that is stricken, I guess the 300,000 would remain. Okay, never mind. I apologize. I was going to say that it would go back to having, to just the paragraph, subsection A on page 2 without all that stuff stricken, but there is the 300,000 added, so it just might take on a different shape if that's if there was a bit of leeway just to clean the bill up if this amendment passes.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Committee, question being called. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? No. Okay. The amendment to the amendment is not adopted. Okay, show of hands, all in favor? 5. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's not adopted. Okay, we are back on the amendment. Question on the amendment, and this page is what we're discussing is the amendment. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay, amendment is adopted. Any further discussion on page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Oh, Heather?
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, with the Representative McGuire and Representative Burt amendment that passed, I heard, and wanted to make sure I heard correctly, that Representative McGuire said "and conforming amendments." So for example, some that have been identified, I don't want to go on the fly and say that this is all of them, but on page 4, where it says that the money is distributed to the university to be used for funding the program, most likely, the conforming amendment would be to the Department of Transportation. And then also on page 6, I believe that there was also, it was given for the university's technology transfer program. So anyway, I just want to remind or point out that there would be some of these conforming amendments that I believe I heard Representative McGuire say as part of his amendment.
Okay, thank you. Is everyone clear on that? And Representative McGuire did say "and conforming changes," which we will need to make. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Co-Chair.
I'm sorry to draw this out, but so Heather, the way I read portions of the bill now, we are referring to all of the funding that goes to that specific department, including the money that goes for asphalt evaluation too. We're not just talking gravel roads here. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, the funding goes to that department. The increases on page 4, the increases are destined specifically for gravel roads. At the bottom of page 4, starting at line 16, they indicate that not less than $150,000 from the county contribution, so that's the additional county contribution, and not less than $300,000 from the Department of Transportation under paragraph A1 shall be designated to the transfer program, technology transfer program, so for gravel road inventory. So the increases are going to the gravel program. The Representative McGuire change would be program-wide.
Okay, everyone clear? Any further discussion? Question being called. Heather, please take the roll on 23 LSO 0022 as amended.
Senator Anderson? Senator Furphy? Senator McEwen?
No.
Senator Pappas? Senator Pappas?
No.
No. Representative Baker?
No.
Representative Burt?
No.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative McGuire?
No.
Representative Obermueller?
No.
Representative O'Hearn?
No.
Representative Romero Martinez? Representative Stivar?
No.
Chairman Burkhart?
No.
Co-Chairman Landon?
No.
Representative Henderson?
Mr. Chairman, I changed my aye to a no.
So you want reconsideration, correct?
Right.
Okay. Heather, did you get that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we got that.
So 23 LSO 0022 is not, version 10 is not adopted. And thank you for the robust discussion. Next up is WyoLink bill drafts, which is kind of a misnomer. I've got to find them in my packet. They're somewhere here. I've
Mr. Chairman, these are not, well, the wrong version is in your packet. The right version was at your desk this morning.
Yes, I put them in my binder. That's why I can't find them now. Heather, why don't you just proceed? I'll find them eventually.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so just a preliminary. It was original number 16, tab. So we have two bills to consider. 23 LSO 0210 and 0211. And these were both proposed at the last meeting. And you need version 0.7 on 0210 and 0.5 on 0211.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just wait for everybody to get those. Everybody have them? Okay. And Heather, if you just wait one moment.
Okay.
The change, the two versions, the change is to change the title to Wyoming Public Safety Communication System Trust Fund and Wyoming Public Safety Communication System Funding, to drop WyoLink, which is a very specific program. And just the bill titles more accurately describe what we're discussing. So with that, Heather, please explain the
Mr.
bills to
Chairman.
us.
I would like to begin with 210, if that works for you.
Yes.
Okay. This first bill, the committee requested that a trust fund be established so that the system is paid for once and for all and it's addressed. So that is what you see before you. This bill draft creates the Wyoming Public Safety Communication System Trust Fund, and it shall be administered by the state treasurer. It authorizes the receipt of donations and gifts and authorizes the distribution of the investment earnings, and amends also the permissible state investments so that it actually includes this trust fund in those state investments, and provides for the continuous appropriation and an appropriation to make this all happen. So if you move to page 2, this, where it's created is in Title IX, and the subparagraph A creates the trust fund. Subparagraph, or subsection B explains that monies deposited into the trust fund shall be transmitted, and that, shall be transmitted to the treasurer, and then credit to the funds to pay for this. And it just was, one additional thing is that the committee's directive was that 90% of the investment earnings, this is on page 3, shall go to pay for the system, and 10% shall go back to the corpus. So my understanding from the fiscal folks, that's what takes place on page 3. And then, and it also tells what the money may be spent for. But then when you, there's a conforming amendment on page 4. This is the permissible investments thing that I was mentioned, that the treasurer this is included in some of the funds that the treasurer may be able to invest. Section 3 is the appropriation, and which I understand from fiscal, would to at invested at approximately 4% return, would, in order to cover the public safety communications costs, as well as the committee wanted it for the different users and everything, to just, really cover everything for this so that there aren't outlying out there. The amount here is $100 million from the general fund to go into this trust fund, to be again worked and invested like is provided for in the bill draft. And then just that it would be effective in July. That's that bill draft. Oh, and no, that's everything. The second bill draft, 211 version 0.5, This, the committee wanted an appropriation just to straight cover it for the year with the, and with very much included the language on page 2, starting at lines 5, about it being the intent of the legislature that this appropriation be included in the standard budget for YDOT thereafter. Now, these bills are not mutually exclusive. The first one could take care of this year, and the next one could be the fund. There may be, if the committee chooses to pass both of them, it may be that you would want to consider on page 2, line 8, removing "and thereafter," because just having it be included in the standard budget for the Department of Transportation for the immediately succeeding fiscal biennium, simply because in theory, if the trust fund is working and doing its thing, then thereafter would not need to be included. That's if these work in concert, the two bills.
Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Heather. No questions. So, Director, Mr. Raymond, you want to come up? I think we can handle this at the same time, if that's acceptable to both of you. Director,
Mr. Chairman,
proceed.
just from YDOT's perspective, from the agency's perspective, again, we appreciate the concept as it came up. What we certainly like about the first bill, 0210, is establishment of a trust fund and using that to maintain the system. As we've talked about before, the system is robust, it's working, but it does have to be maintained. And there is, in the future, it's more and more people are coming on. And so this sets us up for the future on this critical public safety communication system. And I think the concept is good and appreciate the idea and the bill.
All right. Mr. Ryman? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, do we know about what the annual cost to maintain WildLink is right now? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator, I'd like to kick that over to Mr. Smolinski with your permission.
Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, the average cost right now is roughly about $3 million per year.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, so that's maintaining the system. That doesn't talk about capital improvement and replacement cycle.
Mr. Ryman? Senator McCune?
Mr. Chairman, as I understand the trust fund, the money that's made off of it, for lack of a better term, is solely for maintenance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Raymond, you wanted to make a comment about that one?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jeremiah Raymond here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We do stand in support of the trust fund in particular. I think this will resolve the long-term issue we've had around the operations and maintenance of the system. Mr. Chairman, the trust fund, and this goes to your question, Senator McCune, is set up to do a couple of things. It would, the interest that is garnered from that account would be available for a few things. First off, as the bill provides on page 3, the first 10% of that is reinvested back into the program. And I really appreciate Chairman Burkhart for bringing that concept forward, because it allows the trust to grow over time by itself. It self-funds to that growth. The remaining 90% is available for several things in a hierarchical priority So the first one has to be funded before you can go to the second one. So as you can see at the bottom of page 3, operations and maintenance, including offsetting any charges to local government users of the system, is the first priority. That's the $3 million or so that the director just spoke of. That's been, in my conversations with you, our main priority, because that's where local governments are currently funding that out of our mineral royalty grant. So that was our first priority, and that's the base of this. As you move over to page 4, you get into the second priority is the acquisition or lease and maintenance of state and local government user equipment. So you can, we have radios and other equipment that's needed to connect to this system, and so that would be available. Then you go down to future infrastructure development and expansion. So if we needed new towers, if we needed, I believe that they're looking at some microwave connections, that would be able to fall in there, and then other expenses. Again, each one of these has to be fully funded before you can go to the next, as it's provided in the bill. Hopefully that answers the question, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but we certainly would appreciate your support of this as we move forward and trying to take care of a critical system across the state that both the state and local users engage with, and certainly will give more certainty in terms of local government users, because a lot of them have been leery of this system and are maintaining other systems, and I don't think that does us any good. It's time once and for all that we just go to one system and properly invest in it, and I think that's what this bill will help us do.
Other questions? Representative O'Hearn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only question I have is on page 2, line 10. And we've talked about this in the past, collected from grants, gifts, transfers, bequests, and donations. It doesn't have, nobody's putting skin in the game except us. And I would like to see how some users, if you give your kid a bicycle and he doesn't spend $15 of it from his paper route money, he doesn't care about it. So I'm just wondering if we can collect any kind of money from anybody of some small amount that means they have skin in the game. Does that make sense to you guys? That make sense?
Panel?
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, I'll give you a local government perspective on that. This language is intended to allow us the ability, just like with all of the rest of the trust funds that we currently have in place, the ability to accept things like the ARPA funds, other gifts and bequests that might exist out there, and be able to deposit those and additionally grow this fund. In the conversations leading up to this, I actually had diagrammed some other mechanisms by which you might continuously fund this program. You've heard some of us talk about, including some in the audience, that perhaps you should have a surcharge on fines and such that you might have for speeding and that. And that's still a concept that perhaps we could bring forward. If the notion is that local governments ought to contribute to this, I would just make it very clear that we believe we are already contributing. We've been paying through the mineral royalty grant to cover our charges of this system. Many counties actually own and maintain towers that are used on this system, independent of what the state has, but in cooperation with the state. We're purchasing radios, we're purchasing lots of other things. So my members would suggest, yes, we are already contributing significant financial funding towards this system, but we want to try and pursue something that is longstanding. And I would just say that the other thing about a trust fund of this sort is it's a savings account at the end of the day. If we need to go back and make a decision and go in a different direction, we always can. That's available to us. But I think this is a good investment of
I agree.
of funds.
Follow up?
Mr. Chairman? Oh, I agree. I'm going to vote, I'm yes on this. I just want, charge every user $10 a month or $3 a year. Just something that shows that, hey, we pay for this system. We want to make sure it works just as well as all of us do. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, to the extent that there was some recognition for the expense that my members are putting in, we certainly understand that. The other thing I would say is that there are some private entities that do hit the system, and there might be a question about whether we might want to set up a system by which we would charge them to use the system.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question as to what happens if we have say, a weak investment program and it does not produce the 3 to 5% or whatever you're thinking you're going to get out of this. Maybe it just breaks even in a year. It sounds to me like needs to be $3 million coming from somewhere to maintain this system. What do we do now? Where does that come from?
Mr. Raymond.
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, currently the funds for this come from a couple of different sources. The majority of it, over $4 million, comes from a carve-out of the mineral royalty grant, which would otherwise be available to local governments for emergency purposes that they might need to come before the State Loan and Investment Board for. The state's also appropriating funds, and it's important to note that all of that could be wiped out if we went in this particular direction. It's my understanding that a $30 million investment would probably reap about $1.5 million a year, so we should see sufficient funding to at least cover the operations and maintenance under the funding that's provided in this particular legislation.
Other questions? Okay, no other questions? So, on either bill, 210, 211? Okay, with that, I will open it up to public comment. Anyone wish to speak on draft 210 or 211? Anyone on Zoom? No one on Zoom? Okay. Anyone in here? Don't be shy. Okay, seeing no one, I will close public testimony. And we'll take these one at a time. Committee, 23 LSO 0210, version 7. Move the bill. Representative Henderson. Second on that, okay? So, page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Yes, Heather?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was chuckling at if someone would have changes on page 6, that's all.
Okay, all right. Hey, it's late in the day, that's good. Thank you. Committee? Question being called. We are voting on 23 LSO 0210. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Senator Anderson? Senator Furphy? Senator McEwen? Senator Pappas? Representative Baker? Representative Burt? Representative Henderson? Representative McGuire? Representative Obermueller? Representative O'Hearn? Representative Romero Martinez? Representative Stivar? Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Landon?
Okay,
11 I.
0210 is adopted. Next one is 23 LSO 0211. Moved by O'Hearn. Seconded by Obermueller. Any discussion on the bill? Okay. Yes. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, you and I having sat on appropriation, this will be at least a discussion point that we can forward. We know that every single year we have to fund this program, this maintenance program for that emergency communication system. So this suggestion will likely not be met with a whole lot of enthusiasm, because that's just the nature of appropriations. But I think it's a good discussion item that is worth sending forward to them. So hope you'll support it.
All right. Okay. So good comments. So page 1, page 2.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, that 8,000,006, is that just for 1 year? Because I think they said there was, or is this for biennium?
Senator, I believe it is biennium. It says that on page 2, line 8, succeeding fiscal biennium. So
Okay.
I'm. Yeah. Heather?
Mr. Chairman, that is for the remaining year of the biennium, and then but it's not just for maintenance. Remember, it's for all 4 of those things, subsections or subparagraphs A, B, C, and D, like was in both bills. But that amount is for the remainder of the biennium.
Okay, Heather, thank you for the reminder, because I think what this was a cover bill to get us into the trust fund and then have the trust fund generate money. We have to do something until it's up and running. So that's my recollection. Mr. Co-Chair, is that yours?
I believe that's exactly it, Mr. Chairman. You know, in the meantime, we've got to provide the funding for this communication system out there. And I'm sure that the Appropriations Committee would take that up under discussions with the director and his department. But all this does is throw the backing of the Transportation Military Affairs Committee behind that visit. And I, for one, will be happy to do that because one way or the other, we've got to fund this system, so.
Okay. So, any further discussion or amendments? Question being called. We're voting on 23 LSO 0211.5. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Senator Anderson? Aye. Senator Furphy? Aye. Senator McEwen? Aye. Senator Pappas? Aye. Representative Baker? Aye. Representative Burt? Aye. Representative Henderson? Aye. Representative McGuire? Aye. Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Romero Martinez? Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Landon?
Aye.
14 aye.
Okay. So that brings us to the last topic for the day, advanced transportation concepts. You know, is Senator Case going to join us by Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead and admit him. We'll let him introduce the idea here.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, please proceed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will say that you guys are very quick down there in Cheyenne. And so I think you're way ahead of schedule, and thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate the indulgence of my two good friends and the good chairman of the Transportation Committee to let us squeeze this topic onto your agenda for basically an educational purpose. But it's kind of an exciting concept that I have learned more about and learned about the principles behind it. And so I think it would be fun for the committee as well as educational to learn more about their proposal.
Okay.
So AirTrack is an advanced transportation concept that is kind of gaining some ground around the country. You have folks there today. I'm pretty sure that you would have Eugene Timperman would be there today. And I believe James Pitchford is there as well. And they'll be talking to you about AirTrack. You may also have Mr. Bagley from the university, who's an engineer over there. And the folks at AirTrack have been talking to the folks at the University of Wyoming, as well as other universities across the country, including CSU, in part to do some of the research to bring this to fruition. They've been in touch with the Federal Department of Transportation. They've been favorably received, and it's an exciting concept. So, Mr. Chairman, that's as much as I can really help you with. I would just encourage you to listen to these gentlemen, and you'll be as excited as you are to hear from them.
Okay. Thank you, Senator, and I do have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Have you read all of those books behind you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes, sir. They actually don't make it in this bookshelf unless I've read them. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Senator,
a lot of history, a lot of economics.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. So with that, gentlemen, if you would introduce yourselves for the record and proceed.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee, we want to thank you for your time today. And Senator Case, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. We also want to thank Professor Bagley for University of Wyoming for being here with us today. And I just want to let you know, I'm a public servant. I spent 25 years in the military, the Marine Corps, the Air National Guard, and the Navy. I applaud I want to say, as a public servant, the spirit in this room is wonderful. It's a spirit of cordiality. You have a good sense of humor, and your sense of service to the people of Wyoming and to one another, I think, is extremely admirable. And so I just want to thank you for that. That's the only way we're going to get ahead. But thank you for this opportunity, and then I will turn it over. But the last thing I beg of you is please don't let perceptions direct you. What we're about here today is to introduce this technology. This is a long-term relationship that we want to have with everyone. And we want both you as members of this committee, the citizens of Wyoming, informed consent. So our commitment is transparency, honesty, and commitment to getting answers to any of the questions that you have. With that, I'll turn it over to our founder. And
before you do that, for
yes,
the
sir.
record, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. James Pitchford.
Okay.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Tipperman, I assume that's you? You're the only one left.
I got the mic on.
Okay, you might have to get a little closer to that. They're a little strange in this room.
Mr. Chairman, senators, and representatives of the state of Wyoming, we are very grateful for this opportunity to bring this concept to you. And I am an aeronautical engineer and a physicist. My wife and I ran a small consulting business for 35 years. We worked on patents for the likes of Boeing, Honeywell, General Electric, did many patents for Ethicon endosurgery. And as an aeronautical engineer, I've always thought about better transportation, more efficient transportation, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. This first slide, our country has transportation challenges, as you can see on our ports, our rails, our highways, and our airways. They are all congested, there are overcapacity, and when that happens, efficiency drops. We have been offered recently failed transportation technologies in the form of high-speed rail, magnetic levitation, and vacuum tube technologies. I would like to talk to you today about the future of transportation. I just gotta find the button. I may need Heather for this. Yes. Wyoming has transportation challenges, and you all are more familiar with them than I am. Our daughter and her husband and 2 grandchildren live in Lander, Wyoming, and we've been trying to come, not trying, we have been coming to and going from Wyoming for the past 15 years, and no matter how we've done it, it's not an easy trip. We live in Cincinnati, Ohio, by the way. That's 1,550 miles away. And, but looking at your state, I-25 from here down to Denver is of great interest because transportation is the key to economic development. And connecting to the Front Range, what I think would bring Wyoming many great advantages. I-80 is a challenge, as you can see in the slide. It doesn't matter whether it's winter or summer. And when working with this concept, I got interested in Wyoming because I don't think there's anything in Wyoming, much less 5,000 feet of altitude. When I fly my private airplane back home, I don't even fly that high. We live at about 900 feet. And also, the weather that you have here and the winds and the conditions are very demanding. And I've often thought that the University of Wyoming and their meteorological department could really help us in defining the design parameters that are going to be required to make this system function and function properly. I'm not doing very well with this. Is it up there? Oh, okay. Oh, fine. The future of transportation, the way we see it, is that I spoke about waterways, railways, highways, and airways. Thank you. There is a new one called guideways, and that is this air track. And this is not a new business. This is really the initiation of a new industry that will parallel the airline industry. The BBC recently, in the last couple of years, put out a program. It's a 3-hour program. There's really 3 programs, 1 hour each, on the impact of the airline industry. And they concentrated on the Airbus 380, which can haul as many as 750 people at one time. The first program was, what's it take to get this thing ready for flight? The second program is, what does it take to keep it in flight? And the third is, what do you do when you land it? And I was, as an aeronautical engineer, I was just totally surprised at the magnitude of the commercial airline industry. This opportunity is literally going to parallel that in the years to come. This is rather frustrating. Now, let me back up. Can I back up? Now, this configuration, what you're looking at here overhead, is a concentrically designed air cushion machine that runs in a trough. And that's called a guided air cushion machine. Why do we use air cushions? Well, they permit of higher speeds with very simplistic machinery. We hang below it a vehicle. And I'll talk about that a little bit further on. But this configuration allows for many different variants. And our first variants that we studied was passengers, of course. The fuselage there that you look at, I call it a fuselage because actually it is the fuselage of a Lockheed Electra, a short-haul aircraft that was designed to haul 102 people in short-haul transportation. It used 4 engines of 3,225 horsepower each. And that was designed to like go from Cincinnati to Chicago. And you go, that's a lot. Then the next thing we looked at was partial freight. And partial freight proves to be 1.3 to 3.7 times more profitable than moving passengers. Then we're also, because of the recent COVID pandemic and the congestion at the ports, we looked at moving containers. And quite frankly, yes, we can pick up a shipping container and move it with the AirTrack vehicle. Lastly, we also looked at moving military assets, and you can literally beef the system up and make that happen. Notice that in the configuration, the sides of the vehicle open up. All the aisles in this vehicle are transverse. You load in one side and you get out the other side. We can load 100 people in less than a minute and unload them as well. Now, the cost for building this system has been estimated at $15 to $30 million a mile. The operating cost is based on our business model for moving passengers at a cost of 25 to 30 cents per seat mile. That's half the cost of running your automobile. The development cost, $2 billion in 3 years. And that number was given to us by Greg Martin, who spent his lifetime at Boeing Corporation. He was their chief engineer on the design, the development, the launch, and the assembly of the International Space Station. And he spent many years in their Phantom Works. And when Greg looked at this technology, he said, we've taken paper airplanes, military paper airplanes, to a flying demonstrator in less than a year. He said, this is nowhere near as complicated as a military jet aircraft. He said, within that 3 years, he could develop it, commercialize it with certification and destructive testing. Now, the business model we used was based on Southwest Airlines in 2009, which was a very tough airline year. And they made a small profit that year, and no one else did. We made a few simplifying assumptions, like we don't need 3 for a crew, we only need 1. We don't need nearly as much fuel, like a quarter or 3/16 the amount of fuel, to do the same mission of moving 100 people on a short-haul mission. Now, AirTrack, and the chart there that you see down below here, AirTrack at $15 to $30 million a mile. Compared to Hyperloop, those numbers come from an internal letter that they wrote several years back, and Forbes published it, so we got to know what it was. They estimated themselves it would be $83 to $121 million a mile. The high-speed rail number there is based on California's experience. And the maglev is based on the state of Maryland's experience when there was a serious proposal in recent years to build a maglev from the center of Baltimore to the center of Washington, D.C. at a cost of $10 to $12 billion for 43 miles. You just about get it up to speed when you have to start stopping it. That amounts to $120 to $250 million a mile. Now, what is AirTrack? AirTrack is Standard Technology Advanced Guideway, is what we're calling it right now. I patented the concept as Standard Technology Advanced Rail, the STAR system, and when you look at the patent, that's what you're going to see. What it is, and you see here in the middle of the diagram, a concentrically designed air cushion system that runs in a trough called a guideway with a passenger vehicle hung below it. Now, so we built a 1/16 scale proof of concept model. And in this video, you see that the concentrically designed cushion is hovering the unit very nicely in the guideway. Now, when you look at the left-hand diagram, you see the concentrically designed cushion in the guideway. It's hardly visible, but you can see a roof over the top of that guideway to make it an all-weather system. That roof has a lot of real estate up there for solar cells, and we will be collecting solar energy for the system. Hung below it is the passenger vehicle. And what that does is it forms a natural pendulum, so it can swing freely back and forth. That advantage is shown here in this demonstration. Come on, Ron. Ah. Well, this is not good. No, it's stuck.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. Is there a way that staff could show the video or show the presentation?
I think, Senator, I think we're trying to get the video to run with our system.
And
It's our
Senator,
fault.
In addition to that, we've had some struggles, Senator, throughout the day. We've locked up and lost the stream a couple of times. That could be a contributing factor as well. So we'll hang on and hopefully we can get back up and running here.
Well, don't blame the technology committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we'd be the last to do that.
How can I get it back to my program? I can reboot the program. I guess I can drop on this whole thing. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Are we back on there? Yeah, share back on. Heather's a lifesaver. Thank you, Heather. The video that I tried to show you, and I'm not going to attempt that again, shows the vehicle swaying very nicely as it would go around a curve. The point is that configuration allows the vehicle to make a coordinated turn at any speed in any turn, no matter how fast the radius of the turn doesn't matter. So you always get a comfortable ride with this. And that's exactly what you experience in a well-piloted aircraft. Now, the bottom illustration here shows the AirTrack is a modular system. You start with foundations in the ground. You got towers, you got cross members, you have guideway segments that are all lifted into place in units. And quite frankly, this can be taken down the same way. There's no other mass transportation concept available or in existence that he can even think that way. So if a route doesn't work, you can take it down and put it somewhere else. Now, also in this illustration, you see that we talk about a high-speed switch. And to demonstrate that, you have a vehicle approach the switch area, and as it approaches, it descends basically one guideway diameter and continues on the main route. The next vehicle, let's say, wants to go on an alternate route. The switch rail comes down. It's on a balance system. It's run by weights that are shifted back and forth. It's either up or down. It's never in the middle. The next vehicle then crosses across that switch rail and it then exits on an alternate route. That's called a high-speed switch. Most rail switches that I'm familiar with are very low-speed items. This we intend to transition at 70 miles an hour so that the system works and keeps on working. Now, one thing that the state of Ohio told us after we showed this to them about 5 different times is that, and each time we showed it to them, they said, the flexible rail concept is a real merit, point of merit, because they were not going to talk to us about rigid rail. Rigid rail will never happen in Ohio. So then also, when you look at all of the features of the system, it allows the formation of regional transportation networks from city center to city center at 150 to 200 miles an hour, from neighborhood or suburb to city center at 90 miles an hour. And we only anticipate 90 miles an hour because most of those routes are going to be more curvaceous. So this is what is called a hub and spoke transportation system. It does not yet exist in the world. It's the same machinery that does everything, and the switch technology allows you to go from point start to point finish. Now, looking at Wyoming, and our daughter lives in her family in Lander there, there's some possibilities. The first one is to Denver, from Cheyenne down to Denver, and I think that is the most important one, obviously, at this time. I-80 needs to be helped across Wyoming, and going over Elk Mountain is always a challenge. That's why we never drive to Wyoming in the wintertime. In fact, most of our trips to Wyoming are in the summertime. Then, of course, we took a look at going from Cheyenne up through Rollins, Lander, Du Bois, Teton, and up to the park, Yellowstone. Also, we looked at the route of going up through Casper and Shoshone and Cody and doing that. And we got some very interesting results. From Cheyenne to Denver, and this is based on an AADT of 100,000, and auto miles is 100 miles. The auto cost would be $55 one way. The air track cost would be $29. The total auto travel time is 1 hour and 31 minutes on the best day in the best traffic conditions that you can imagine. The air track time, very dependably, would be 35 minutes. The departure intervals would be about 3.5 minutes. It would create 870 jobs, and it would cost somewhere around $2.5 billion. But it would pay back in 14.3 years. And then also we looked at going up to Yellowstone by Wyoming 30 and Lander, of course, 400 on a AADT of 20,000, 486 miles. Auto cost $267, air track cost $226. And then in this calculation, that's 3/4 of the cost of running your automobile. 7 hours and 47 minutes for the Otto, 2 hours and 52 minutes for Air Track, 14-minute intervals to haul that number of passengers, 873 jobs, $10.9 billion, and it would pay back in about 28 years. Going to Yellowstone through no, this is okay, let's skip that one. It's about the same to go up through Cody to Yellowstone. The other one is across I-80 to Evanston on a AADT of 15,000. That's 357 miles, $196 for the car, $168 for Air Track, 5 hours and 16 minutes for the car, 2 hours and 7 minutes for Air Track, 18-minute intervals. So you get good service with this concept, 491 jobs at $8.1 billion and about 38 years to pay it back.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's building employees, I assume? How much is it after it's all built? And what kind of system is this? You mentioned solar, and it's a hybrid system, so it's also running a gasoline?
There are options at this point. It can be all solar. The University of Missouri Science and Technology is convinced that they can do it all with solar and actually can collect more solar energy than is required to run a vehicle down that guideway every minute. And it can, but I think it really realistically in the beginning, the first demonstrators will probably be hybrid.
Okay.
But it will be a demonstrator.
And how many people will it employ after it's built?
Mr. Timberman?
These are estimates at this time, and I really can't answer that question. The calculation, though, that we've done is based on the number of employees that it takes to build it and to operate it for the first year. But then I would imagine the number of employees after that would probably be about 25%.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask Pitch here to go through this slide.
The importance of this slide is it's a snapshot of the socialization process. So in order for us to commercialize Air Track, we have to develop a cadre of influencers. Influencers could be investors, they're legislators, they're administrators, they're directors of transportation, they're high net worth investors. And so let's start on the left, Dennis Muhlenberg. Up until a couple of years ago, he was the president and CEO of the Boeing Company, the largest aerospace company in the world, one of the largest for-profit companies in the world. When Dennis's focus was on the cost per mile, and he did a deep dive. Dennis is an aerospace engineer. So when Gene told him that it was 15 to 30 million a mile, Dennis's response was, even at 30 million a mile, his view was that we would be building air track routes not only around the United States, but around the world. Now, having Dennis as our board chair opens doors for us. Why? He brought Greg Martin. Greg Martin managed the International Space Station for NASA and Boeing. But what I want to emphasize here is when we have these numbers, they're not coming from people that don't have extensive experience in industry and high-tech engineering challenges. So Greg, as Gene has said, felt very confident that we could build a turnkey system for $2 billion. Once that is built, then any developer community around the world has that technology for use. Jeff Worley, below that, he was the CEO for Boeing Australia, the COO for Boeing US. But what I want to emphasize here is on our prospectus and our business plan, which is over 120 pages, very detailed and technical. Both Greg and Jeff and Dennis were very instrumental in developing that. So what I want to leave you with is you could have a high degree of competence and confidence in what they are finding. Then the next thing is, because we will always be a public-private partnership, and Air Track will just be the guardian of the technology. We're not a developer, we never will be. So if it was in Wyoming, and we would always emphasize that it would be private investment. And so, but it's still going to be public-private partnerships because we need rights-of-way, and we're working with local and state transportation authorities. So they have a role. They absolutely have a role. But as has been mentioned here, do we want to put the entire cost on the government? No. We want to shift the cost of this system commercially, and we believe we can do that. Why? Because the positive return on investment. As Gene said, how many transportation systems do we know of in the US and around the world that actually have a positive return on investment? As Gene likes to say, what mostly happens is a
ROI is rate of indebtedness.
yes, rate of indebtedness.
ROI for air track is return on investment.
Correct. So Senator Case, we give you honorable mention here. It's important for us that we make the case with elected officials, administrators, from the state, from the grassroots level, at the county level, all the way up to the state and the federal level. Judge Executive Gary Moore, he is the senior executive in Kenton County in Kentucky. He's also the immediate past president of the National Association of Counties. And he wants to help us socialize AirTrack nationally through the National Association of Counties. But his endorsement of AirTrack, I think, is also demonstrates that at the local level, county level, there's real interest. Why Kenton County? That's where CVG Airport is, where you have Amazon, they built their air hub. And there, a lot of traffic now is being generated, air traffic, but also truck traffic due to parcel freight. And in Kentucky, I-71 is a parking lot quite often. In fact, they're doing expansion projects there. But Gary Moore is very supportive. Below that, General Reiner, how do we know him? Through Dick Mudge. Dick Mudge is one of the country's top transportation economists. He's a thought leader. PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, consultant on transportation to Amazon, other large companies. Dick has been supporting us for over a year, giving us very good advice. He was introduced by David Montgomery, PhD from Harvard, worked in 3 administrations, very energy conscious, and it was David that said, I need to introduce you to Dick Mudge. But these are thought leaders. Let's go to the right. This system is going to be built by industry partners. They're the ones that are going to benefit, and they're the ones that are going to help build it. Zoltech is one of the country's top composites developers. They were acquired by Toray Group, which is one of the world's top composites manufacturers, developers in the world. But Zoltech saw early on, 2 years ago, that what they realized was we start building AirTrack systems, we're going to need massive amounts of composites. Gene didn't mention it, but one of the reasons why he was encouraged to pursue building the AirTrack system was when Boeing decided to build an all-composite airplane, all composites, the 787 Dreamliner. So that's that Dreamliner, tube, 35,000 feet at under pressure, high speeds, can manage very, very severe forces. Those are not the forces that will be on an AirTrack vehicle in western Wyoming, even in the worst winter weather. It will withstand it. But Zoltech realized that we would soon outstrip the capacity for composites. What does that do? It drives the industry. So one of the things that Zoltech did was they have companies they align with all around the country. A&S Composites Engineering, small little boutique composite engineering firm in Winnipeg, Manitoba. But they did a deep dive. Zoltech introduced us to Gene. They non-disclosure, looked at his patent, and they confirmed that the data that Gene used in building the cost of AirTrack was very, very close to what they came up on the composites. Whether it's the support towers, the guideways, the vehicle, it's a cost driver. And by affirming Gene's technical data, what that basically said was his cost driver, when we talk 15 to 30 million, the composite's a real cost driver. It was accurate. So that's important to know. Below that, we have universities. These research universities are going to help us mature the technology. And we can't come to you. 4 years ago when Gene contacted me, it was Gene and just a couple of other engineers. It's difficult to get everybody's attention when it's just a couple of engineers talking about a technology. We start adding universities, respected universities, and I believe we can add University of Wyoming. But we have University of Missouri Science Technology. They were the first one that came on board and said, we want to build a full-scale or partial-scale demonstrator. They want to be involved with it. They want they're looking for the cachet that comes with developing a modern transportation system globally. So they're very much interested. They're very committed. Purdue University. We briefed Purdue University, one of their senior engineers, on a Monday. On Tuesday, he got back to us and said he had permission from the chancellor of Purdue University to support us on paper. Why? Because he was very, very taken by the technology. It shows promise. We have Purdue, University of Louisville, Simmons College of Kentucky. They're an HBCU. Why are they important? Because there are a lot of transportation inequities built into current transportation systems. Not enough people are participating in the economic engine of the United States. So the more people we can bring into that economic engine, and this transportation system can do that to participate, the more valuable it becomes and the more profitable. So, and at this point, but I want to say we have 6 universities, and I want to let Professor Bagley just talk about why he is interested, his department is interested, and I hope you will briefly also talk about a discussion we had last week with Colorado State and his counterpart there who's also interested. So Professor Bagley, thanks for being here and commenting.
So, Dr. Bagley, please bring us home.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I am David Bagley. I serve as Associate Dean, one of the Associate Deans of the College of Engineering and Physical Sciences at the University of Wyoming. And one of my portfolios in that role is to keep an eye out for technologies that researchers at the university could participate in. And so I need to be very clear. I do not represent President Seidel on this topic. I do not represent the University of Wyoming. Representing my opinion of and excitement about this, but it is certainly not the entire university. And so when AirTrack first contacted us and wanted to talk, Dean Wright and I met with them. I thought it was a very interesting and exciting idea. I used to be department head of civil and architectural engineering, and that's typically where our transportation experts are housed, and so I had some familiarity with the transportation issues. And then I also happened to live in Cincinnati a while back, and so I was familiar with some of the area they're working there. One of the things I did, though, was I contacted Dr. Genda Chen at the Missouri School of, or University of Science and Technology. And he's a internationally renowned transportation person. He's got a fantastic center there. We got a professor from the University of Wyoming is participating with them on a project that's going to the National Science Foundation. And what's interesting is our professor is an expert in aerodynamics, the movement of air, and the importance of that, and how and examining how that may affect noise, because every transportation system we always worry about the noise issues, and so we do have someone from the University of Wyoming working with Dr. Chen's group, which is working with AirTrack, and they are preparing a proposal, actually a very large proposal to the National Science Foundation, and we hope it's it's successful. We did meet last week with Dr. Surin Chen at the Colorado State University, because if we have interest in moving between Cheyenne and Denver, we certainly would need folks in Colorado who have expertise in that area, and he expressed interest as well in participating in these discussions. What I would just close with is that the University of Wyoming, like I said, I don't represent them, and even I met with Dr. Sabati, whom you all know, who's our transportation expert, and I said to him, what kinds of things would we do? And he said, we're here to provide facts. If there's a problem or a question out there that looks interesting, we're here to take an impartial look at things and to help develop the facts necessary to move ahead. And I think that was a very appropriate way to put it. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the committee. I'll turn it back over to our AirTrack colleagues.
Thank you, David and Pitch. Now, I think we do have a historic opportunity for job creation, and that's exactly what this would do. Right here, I show the two major routes that I think are of particular concern to Wyoming, Cheyenne to Denver, and then Cheyenne to Evanston. And our ask is consider funding University of Wyoming, Colorado State University, and Simmons to study the feasibility of the Front Range opportunity, to see just really what kind of an opportunity we would have there and what impact it would have on Wyoming. Like I said before, transportation is the key to economic development, and wherever efficient transportation goes, economic development will follow. The interstate highway system is the point in case, or case in point. Where they build highways, economic development has certainly arisen. I used to fly for a General Electric company down to Langley when I was younger, and work down there and then come back. And when we took off in the airplane from Cincinnati, you could see Cincinnati lights, and out there you could see Dayton lights. And then you could almost see Columbus lights on a clear night when we took off. Nowadays, when you take off, it's lights from Cincinnati all the way to Dayton. That's because that highway went in there, and that happens. So that's going to happen here. But air track, and the other thing that the state of Ohio said to me was, go right down the freeway. We don't own that freeway, but we manage that freeway, and every department that we talked to at the state of Ohio said, go down the freeway. So that does really, in our end of the country, is much more congested, much more developed, and that kind of access is very important. Out here, as in some of the slides that I sent you for the what do you call it, the pre-ad, there's a lot of opportunity to not only use the freeways or use the highways, but you have unincorporated or unused, undeveloped land that you could go across. AirTrack only requires an acre or two per mile to install it. It'll be a minimum of 20 feet off the ground. It'll be relatively quiet, more quiet than any other transportation system ever conceived. And land use underneath of that will never change. It'll continue. So, and then landowners in the windmill industry has also proven this without a shadow of a doubt. The landowners will definitely enjoy the income, which will go on and on and on. So then the other thing is we would request that you help us petition the federal government to fund an AirTrack demonstrator in view of the I-80 solution. You cannot decrease the number of the traffic load on that highway. It's like having a problem. You can put a Band-Aid on it, and well, that'll get you through a hard spot. You can do surgery on it, which in this situation on I-80 would be W30, Wyoming 30 bypass. That decreases the problem. It doesn't get rid of the problem. The only way to really cure that problem is you have to have another way of getting people and vehicles across that terrain. And that's why I really want to be very pointed about that we have, this is actually a new form of transportation. It's guideways. It's not an airplane. It's not a train. It's not a highway. And running vehicles autonomously, one a minute, we can do an AADT across, it's a single route of AirTrack across the I-80 of 2,880. That's an AADT. That's your annual average daily traffic count. And that would make a significant impact on that highway. Now, that probably does require a multi-state effort because I-80 goes both directions. But when I looked at the AADT data for Wyoming I-80, I saw about what I saw, and it was about half of that traffic goes all the way through. The other half is local. So you'll have trucks get on that highway, they go for a distance and they get off. And so I think that air track could help Wyoming very specifically, without even considering the states on either side. So gentlemen, I thank you for your time. If you have questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Any questions? Committee? Oh, Senator Pappas.
Don't have any questions. Thank you for your presentation. I've been looking at issues like this for a long time, and I thank you for bringing this to my attention. Back in 2006, I actually looked at, I wrote a paper actually for Young Men's Literary Club here in Cheyenne on high speed on the Front Range corridor, high-speed rail. At the time, they were looking at designating an 11th high-speed rail corridor along the Front Range to put I think it was called the Ranger Express. And so I researched a lot of high-speed rail, and you're right, there's a lot of, especially when you start doing hard rail and centrifugal and gravitational forces, you really get into long curves and, and you don't stop very often, and there's a lot of big issues with it. But the problem I see, and I recently did another paper for that club, and it was looking at Amtrak's solution for the Front Range. So the Front Range Urban Corridor, if you don't know, is about 5 million people now, all right? It grew 39% in the last 20 years, 1.6 billion people. And it's projected to grow another 30% in the next 20 years, 1.7 billion people. And 85% of Colorado lives along that I-25 corridor. So you said Cheyenne to Denver, it really should be Cheyenne to Pueblo. That 200 miles is the Front Range Urban Corridor. There's 13 fastest growing counties in the nation are there. And we're going to see exponential growth. We already have 5,000 people a day driving between Cheyenne and Fort Collins or Denver. And there's issues with trying to build, I know Amtrak's looking at a $14 billion solution over 14 years. They have to buy right away and all that kind of stuff. But at the numbers that you're showing us here, I mean, that the solution is mind-boggling at 2.4 billion. Of course, that's only to Denver. But I just think that Colorado has already quit building highways. They're adding lanes right now, but they've found that they're not going to add any more lanes because of what's called induced demand. What happens is you build lanes and you make it easier for people to drive, they just fill it. They found that with T-Rex down there. They've spent $1.67 billion. They put 19 miles of road in and nearly 20 miles of light rail, and in 5 years it filled up again. So they're looking for different ways of transport along the Front Range for passenger and for freight rail as well. And I think rail is just, while it's better than driving, I really like this solution. And so I appreciate you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So with that, Senator Case, thank you for bringing this forward to our attention. A very interesting topic, very interesting presentation. And at least you didn't have to drive all the way down here on the roads.
No, I didn't. I would have, actually. Mr. Chairman, I had another appointment this morning I couldn't get out of. I'm flattered and pleased that you took the time to listen to this presentation. I wasn't expecting to see my picture on their presentation as a kind of a supporter. Let me tell you, I'm not affiliated with AirTrack in any way or compensated by it. But my mind goes to these smart people that have really thought something out, and I think it has merit in our future. As a kid who grew up on popular science, and it seems like it fixes some of the problems we've had with our other modes. So thank you very much, committee, for indulging, and maybe we can keep in touch with this and do something for them in the future.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thanks. I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of your presentation. Sorry we're late in the interim and away we go into a session in Wyoming, but we'll be watching and listening, and anything that we can do to better connect Wyoming with your efforts, I would sure be interested, and I'm sure that several of us would be. Appreciate the professor making it over the hill and being here and being involved with it too. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. You're very welcome. So with that, Heather, do we have any pending action items? I think we have a couple letters was about it. We've either passed or
Mr.
not
Chairman.
passed the bills.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if there was public comment at all on that last, and,
I thought this was just information.
oh, it probably was, yeah. And then I didn't want to jump ahead of if there was other business. That was the only thing,
What is?
if there was other business on the agenda.
I don't think
Okay.
there's any other business.
Okay, great. Then in that case, I do have a synopsis of a few things that the committee suggested during the last 2 days. They suggested a letter, well, there was discussion, and I'm not actually sure where the committee came down on this, if it's a directive or not, so please tell me. Because the committee talked about a letter to the governor to express the committee's support for a study or a task force to determine which is the correct agency to operate a program for at-risk youth. Although I think it might have come down to that they were going to do that on their own. I don't know. Please direct me if that should be a letter. That's one. Number two is a memo to the JAC that talks about development of an alternative, this expresses support for development of an alternate route and notifying of the need for that route, the I-81, and then also to express support for an increase to $3 per hour for on-call pay. That's the memo to JAC. I think it has those two items in it. And then there was also, the committee said regarding that I-80 route, that they would like to have a letter to the Transportation Commission notifying them of the same, the need to develop an alternate route.
So, Mr. Chairman, Heather, the first topic regarding the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge, it was my thought that, and I think I represent pretty much where the committee came down on it. I think we would like to send a memo specifically to the governor and to our management council of the legislature. I think it would, my concept would be to involve both of those branches of government in a task force sort of way to look into what we do with that population in Wyoming. And whether or not, frankly, we would look to stand that program back up. If we did and would, it was pointed out that we need to look back and find out what went wrong so that we could move forward with it. But that's the purpose, and the chairman and I can maybe work with you on that. The second one, you're exactly right. Just some heads up to our Appropriations Committee on the issues of I-80 that we discussed. And also budgetary concerns that we wanted to encourage them to consider supporting.
Okay. And then also the accompanying memo, or at least a carbon copy or something of the memo to the Transportation Commission to let them know about the I-80? Okay.
So anything else for staff? Director, you have some final comments? You haven't had enough?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple final comments. But
Proceed.
I'll wait for the appropriate time. I just, on behalf of the 2,000 men and women of WYDOT, wanted to just express my thanks to this body. Certainly, we've been together for 2 years and have been through many issues. And I think that, I don't know that our residents and your constituents know the amount of time and effort that our citizen legislature puts in. And I did just want to share with you that, from our standpoint, we see it, we observe it, we appreciate your efforts, And we thank you for your service to this state, because it matters, and it really matters. And I think, you know, I sort of hate to see this team come to an end. It's been a nice run. I congratulate you on lots of good work, and we'll see you all, you know, in the big body. And I know that next year we'll have a different, you know, transportation commission. But that was just a comment, was thanks to you for your willingness to step up, to go to the work, to get elected, and then to represent the constituents and make things better for our state, which I think is a task of our elected leaders. So I did bring, if you want to take one with you, we did bring some nice yellow caps. I did check with my legal counsel to make sure that it's okay for us to hand those out, but we'd be proud if you wear white out orange as you go about your business. But
We thought you
that's it,
might
Mr.
bring some of
Chairman.
the new license plates for us.
With the black on them.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Mr. Co-Chairman, you had some things.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you. And I think we've already shared this a million times, but we would say again, we appreciate all the troops out across the state who help to do what your agency does for us. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Director. So I just had a couple of things, committee, from the heart. I just want you to know the last 2 years, I have really appreciated the opportunity to work with you guys. It has been one of the best committees I've served with. We've come a long way, and frankly, I'm very proud of the work we've done. I'm kind of anxious to go forward to the session and talk about some of these policies. Whether the bills pass or not, we're passing along issues that we've come across that we feel pretty strongly about, that are worth taking to our colleagues and having a good visit about it. And there's opportunities to maybe knock a couple things in the head and set those who come after us up a lot better. Speaking specifically about emergency communication systems, for example, how good would that be if we could fund that thing and put it away and just know that it was taken care of from now on? It's pretty cool. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to tip my hat to a colleague. This will be his last transportation meeting, and I'm talking about Representative McGuire. Whoever comes after will not fill the shoes of Representative McGuire. And I just hope the committee might join me in thanking him for all of his hours of service. Thank you, Representative. We also do say goodbye to Representative Romero Martinez. We appreciate your service as well, Representative. And back to you, Mr. Chairman.
So before we, and Representative Baker.
Oh, that's right. Representative Baker, we lose you too?
Yeah,
That's not
we
even
do.
fair.
So before we wind this up, is there any further public comment on anything? Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and I will be very brief. I'm very alert as to the road conditions. We've heard that repeatedly today. I just want to share with you a couple of things, and one is to echo what General Reiner and Chairman Landon both said. I think this committee has done remarkable work. It's fascinating work. It's crucial to our state. And so I thank you and applaud you for that. My name is Richard Garrett. I'm a constituent of a couple of people on this panel, and I'm grateful for that. I'm speaking as an individual today. One of the things I wanted to give you a heads up on is I'm no longer with the American Heart Association, but that does not mean I am any less passionate about some of the things that I've brought to this committee's attention in the past, including telecommunicators CPR, and you can count on me to advocate for its passage in the upcoming session. You know, our state is blessed, and I think we learned just again how blessed we are at the last Appropriations Committee meeting last week, where we learned that the financial outlook for the state is much better than we had anticipated it would be just a couple of short years ago. What that means is the state has resources that need to be applied wisely and to the benefit of our state, not only this point in time, but future generations as well. And I know you take that obligation very seriously. I think it's critical that we save money for the state for those future generations. But I think in order to get to the future, we need to apply some of those resources to the benefit of the people of the state that live here now. I'd also add that there are other unused or untapped or unrealized resources that might be available to our state, and I'll just highlight a couple of them. I know Chairman Burkhart is aware of one of them already, and that is that the federal government at this point does not share with the state proceeds from renewable resource development on federal lands. And I know the Chairman Burkhart is going to be taking that issue up in a couple of different committees and in a couple of different ways. So I'd appreciate all of you staying alert to that work. Another is a wind generation tax in our state. I think we're leaving a lot of money on the table that could be used to the benefit of the people of the state of Wyoming. And I know that that is that's rather thin ice for elected folks in our state. But I want to assure you that I'll be walking out on that ice with you. And I won't be in as much jeopardy perhaps, but I will very much have your back, just as Mr. Chairman said that he would have the backs of the Transportation Department. And that brings me to another point very quickly. You know, we've heard from the Department of Transportation, and we hear from other departments as well, about how hard it is to compensate and retain our great state employees. And that's where some of these resources could be very well applied. And I'll then touch on the last point, and I just ask you to keep your hearts and minds open. I'm not asking you for a commitment today, but I'm asking you as we move through the next session to think carefully about how we can improve health outcomes for the people of the state of Wyoming. And I think you all know what I mean. I'm talking frankly about Medicaid expansion. And it's something that can be of benefit to the state of Wyoming, both financially in a very direct way and to the health outcomes of people that really need the help of all of us to continue to thrive in our beautiful state. So again, to echo all the remarks that we've heard from Chairman Landon and others, thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I think of each of you as my friends. I've known each of you for a very long time. I've known a couple of you as classmates. I am very grateful to be a son of the state of Wyoming and to be a friend of one and all on this committee. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Garrett? Okay. Mr. Garrett, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Chairman.
with that committee, you have my thanks for all the hard work you've done. And you have done a lot of work. I think I've spent time on the phone with every one of you over something or other. I know staff has gotten phone calls from myself and the co-chairman late at night saying, what about this? What about that? Have this ready for the morning. And they've done it. So thank you. Heather, very much. Appreciate the work.
Those two.
And to each of you, you have done good. I don't have any other way to put it. Think back 2 years ago and think to today. What are you doing? So thank you. And with that, for one last time, we're adjourned.